Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sidetrack, bringing you our next look at applied energistics. In this episode, we are going to take a look at I'm going to call it advanced, ways that you can craft items using applied energistics. Last episode, we talked about how to use the molecular assembly chamber that you see in front of me to make items that use the standard crafting grid recipes. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at other things that do not require a crafting grid to make. Something like charcoal. How do you make charcoal in a molecular assembly? Well, unless you have other mods, you don't. There are ways to do it if you had, like, say, equivalent exchange, but we're not going to do that. We are going to use a redstone furnace. And if you are familiar with the redstone furnace, it's just like a regular old furnace. It just uses electricity instead of coal. And all you have to do is you throw wood in here, it cooks it up, and it will turn your wood into charcoal. Pretty cool. Well, what if we want to automate that? To automate it, we're going to need a couple of things. We're going to use this basic export bus. Now it's kind of got a little nozzle, and the direction that nozzle is pointing is the direction that it is going to export items. So let's put this down here. We're going to export items into the bottom of our furnace. Well, the bottom of our furnace is set to blue, which is our import side. And into that side, we want to send birch wood. So if you right click on it, you will see your export bus can export birch wood. And it will start exporting birch wood right into the furnace. It goes pretty quickly, roughly one every, half a second or so. And that's very useful. So we are starting to make charcoal here. I suppose I should note before I go on that if you right click on your interface with a wrench, you can change the direction that it's facing. Make sure it's pointing towards our redstone furnace. And now, how are we going to get this charcoal out of our redstone furnace? Well, we'll see that this side is orange, and the orange side is over here. If you're not familiar with thermal expansion, you can change the colors of your sides. So if you want to export it on the other side, you can add an orange slot over there. It's all up to you. And to export items, we're going to use a basic import bus, as in it's importing items into our network. So I'm just going to hold down shift, drop it on here, faces towards our redstone furnace, and you will see that items are very quickly being sucked out. So now we have an endless supply of charcoal. As long as we have birch wood, we will be making charcoal. Very awesome. However, what if you do not want to turn all of your birch wood into charcoal? What can you do then? In order to limit the amount of charcoal this redstone furnace makes, we are going to take a look at another block. This is the ME level emitter. The level emitter is a wonderful block that will emit a redstone signal, as you can see right here, when certain conditions are met. So if we right click on our level emitter, you will see that it says emit levels when levels of an item are above or equal to the limit. Well, the limit is 1 and the item is anything. So if our network has anything more than one item in it, it will emit a redstone signal. Well, that doesn't seem very useful, and we want to look at charcoal. So let's put our charcoal in there, and let's set the number to 128. Why not? So when I have more than 128 charcoal, this light will come on. And as you can see, I have more than 128 charcoal, and this light is on. Let's say I boost this up to 200. Do I have more than 200? I do not. So I don't have more than 200 charcoal. The light is off. The redstone furnace will function. When this light comes on, our redstone furnace is set to only work when there is no redstone signal. So it will shut off, and it will stop burning through all of our birch wood. Oh, look, we made it to 200. That was very quick. So our redstone furnace is no longer working. Very awesome. All right, so this system uses three fairly complex ME blocks to just automate charcoal production. Do you think there's a more efficient way of doing that? Because right now that takes a lot to make. And if we come over and look at our power consumption in our controller, we are using 7.6 Minecraft joules a tick, which is a decent amount of power. I mean, in the end game, it's a drop in the hat, but it's worth thinking about. So what can we do to make this maybe a little more efficient? Well, give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so the next block I want to introduce you to is the ME interface. The ME interface is slightly complicated. It has an area down here for processing that we're going to talk about in a little bit, and an area up here for export config, and then an area that is kind of think of it as a tiny chest, and where exported items go. So the export config is where you want to put any items that you would like to be exported out of the network. And in this case, we're going to use raw chicken, we're going to use raw beef, and we're going to use cobblestone. So it's going to try and export one each of these items. Now, you could add additional items here. Say you wanted to add, we wanted to export 9 chicken at a time. You could do that, and it certainly would work just fine. We're going to only have one just for the sake of this demonstration. And it will sit in this inventory. And you can leave it in that inventory, and it will stay there until something tries to take it out. And in this case, we're going to use thermal expansion item ducts to try and take it out. You could use any mod's equipment. It doesn't really have to be thermal expansion. I just like it. And the way thermal expansion item ducts work is you apply a redstone signal, and it will automatically try to export an item. Now, before I go ahead and do that, I also want to slap on a couple pneumatic servos right here and configure them. In the first filter, or in the first furnace, I want chicken to go in here. And we're going to set it to whitelist so that only chicken can go into this filter, or into this furnace. In the second one, we're going to switch it to beef. And the third one, we're going to have cobblestone. Excellent. Well, we're going to flip this lever and see what happens. Well, chicken will start to come out of our interface. Pretty cool. It will go into our first furnace where it will get turned into cooked chicken. It will move out the bottom through our item ducts back to our ME interface, and it will get sucked back into our network. So we can come over here, we can look at our chicken. We can see that the number of raw chicken we have is slowly going down, and the number of cooked chickens we have is going up. Pretty neat. After our chicken gets finished, you will notice that it is only exporting from the first row because that's just the way this works. Once the chicken is finished, it will then proceed on to the beef, and then proceed on to our cobblestone. Now, one could argue that you don't really have that much chicken, you don't really have that much beef. So really, we could have put them both in this same, and it would cook the chicken, and then it would move on to the beef, and everything would be happy, because chicken and beef cooks very quickly. But I did it this way, just for demonstration, that you can use any number of furnaces, producing any number of items, all from one ME interface. I guess you can have up to 9 or 8. Pretty cool. The next thing I want to show you is the processing part of this ME interface. And let me set something up, and I'll be back in a minute. Oh, but real quick, it's steak time. Yum, yum, yum. All right, up next, we're going to take a look at the processing part of our ME interface. To use the processing part, we have to come over here to our pattern encoder, and let's clear that out of there. We are going to encode whatever recipe we need. So I want to make Invar. I know that Invar is made out of iron, 2 irons, and 1 ferrous ingot. Now, of course, you could use ores. There are all kinds of other ways that you can do this. But this is the way I'm going to do it. Now, my pattern encoder does not recognize that 2 iron and 1 ferrous make anything. However, I know that if I put them all in an induction smelter, or induction furnace, that I will get 3 Invar. So I can manually put them in here. And just to note that I increase the number just by right-clicking additional in there. So 1, 2, 3, there we go. Once your pattern looks good, you go ahead and click encode, and you will get this pattern. Now, say for example, you messed up, and you made the wrong pattern. You clicked it, and you weren't thinking, What you can do is you can take that pattern, make sure it's the right one, 9 ferrous ingots into 1 ferrous bar, or 9. Anyway, you know what I mean. You can shift and right-click it with it in your hand, and it will turn it back into a blank pattern that you can then throw back in here or stick wherever you put your blank patterns. Took me a while to figure that one out. Figured I'd share it with you. All right, so we take this back over to our ME interface. Now notice we're not going to our molecular assembly chamber. We are going to our ME interface. We're going to put this down in the processing line. And now this ME interface knows that if it exports 3 Invar ingots, or sorry, 2 iron ingots and 1 ferrous ingot, that it will get back 3 Invar ingots. It doesn't know how it happens. It just knows that it does. Now the way the ME interface is going to work, it's going to try and export into the nearest inventory. Now, if there's only one inventory in this case, there's no problem. However, if you have multiple things close by and you want to make sure that it goes into the right place, you can right-click and it will go in the direction that the arrow points. But I don't really care about that right now. So, induction smelter is set up to accept items from the left, export items out the bottom, and they're going to, just like over here, loop back into the ME interface. Now when we come over here to our access terminal, we now have the option to craft Invar. So let's go ahead and make 10 of them. Why not? See what happens. We will notice, if we run over here at our induction smelter, it spits out enough iron and ferrous to make at least 10 ingots of Invar. It's actually going to make 12 because it has to. 10 is not divisible by 3, but it makes them fairly quickly, sends them back into the ME interface, and they go back into our network. And if I switch this to, oh, I have lots of Invar in here. Didn't realize I had that much in there, which is pretty nice. Now, the other great thing about this, say you are making something in your, let's get rid of all this Invar. You're going to make something that requires Invar. What makes Invar? Let's make an Invar gear very quickly. So let's clear this out of here, make ourselves an Invar gear pattern, throw that into our molecular assembly chamber, and now I can make an Invar gear. Well, I have no Invar in my crafting. If you'll remember, I have no Invar. So this needs, it says it's currently crafting 6 Invar ingots for our Invar gears. Oh, so it is spitting all of our Invar, or our iron and our ferrous, into our induction smelter. It's making these and is going to try and make a gear one at a time. Oh, now we're down to 8 gears. We must have made 2 in the meantime. There we go. So the really cool thing about your processing lines is if you set it up correctly, you can, say, make a high voltage solar array. Well, high voltage needs all of this stuff, and you need medium voltage, and you need low voltage for medium voltage, and you need regular solar panels for low voltage, and you need all this stuff. If you set this up correctly, you can go to your access terminal, you can type in, I want, 1 HV solar array. And it will take a little while, unless you have lots of big guys waiting to process all your orders. It will make all of the components for your solar arrays, and then it will make your HV solar array, and it just takes a couple clicks from you. It's quite simple. Now, one thing I do want to note is that sometimes in making a large amount of ingots, or in this fashion, sometimes this can get overloaded. It will dump iron into both slots, and then the induction smelter doesn't have a recipe for iron, and so it just sits here. So you might want to think of a slightly different way of setting this up. Again, your ME interface will export into any attached inventory. So if you stick a chest next to it, your interface will get those out of there. Send your iron and your ferrous into the chest, then you can do something else with it. All right, and with that, I want to call it from this episode. Hopefully this gives you an idea, explore lots of ideas for how you can automatically create items that you cannot use simple crafting recipes to do. You can make all kinds of assembly lines using buildcraft or industrial craft or in this case thermal expansion. And next episode, we're going to be talking a little bit more about item handling. So we're going to look at our precision import buses. We're going to talk about sending items to and from your network. We're going to look at a bunch of different items and kind of, I think, wrap up this look at Applied Energistics. We might have one more short after that. We'll see. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Hopefully you now understand some of these blocks that you may not have understood before. Until next time, this is Sidetrack signing off. Have a great day, folks.